I am so pleased and grateful to have our dear friend and friend of Zen Peacemakers, and in fact local Boulder co-resident Zenki Christian Dillo Roshi as our guest today. And it's an honor. And Roshi, thank you so much for giving us your time. And Roshi will be talking about his new book, The Path of Aliveness, and I am reading through it and I'm very much enjoying this book. It's such a wonderful offering to all of us practitioners, younger or more seasoned, as it were. So I don't want to take up any more time with you listening to me. I want to be able to pass to Roshi to lead our session today. Everyone is muted, and thank you for that. I gather we may have opportunity later for us to unmute and speak, and we can do that when we get to that. And also to let you know, we do record these sessions, and they'll be available to the Boulder Zen Center community as well as to Zen Peacemaker community once the video is processed. So with that, I'll thank everybody once again. We have a nice group this morning, and Roshi Zenki, I'll pass this to you to take over. And thank you so much, everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the kind introduction. How to begin? We have this topic. I think it was announced. Resonance, the source of compassion. Now, the way I like to talk about Buddhism is really not so much from a particular school or fixed point of view, but really as an open exploration of our experience. And what I mean by that is not just an exploration of our experience in terms of understanding it better, but with a transformative intent, with the intention to understand our experience in order to transform it in the direction of liberation, wisdom, and compassion. So today, I want to pick out compassion and explore that. How is that rooted in our experience? Excuse me. My feeling is, my observation, that generally speaking, compassion is treated as a kind of virtue. It's a trait that we want to cultivate in ourselves because it's deemed morally good. That could be the definition of a virtue. And yeah, on the one hand, that's okay, but on the other hand, I'm wondering, are we adding another should to our self-improvement project? I should be more compassionate. How do I do that? And recently I came across a definition of enlightenment by Joko Beck. She says, enlightenment is the ending of that hope, the ending in ourselves of that hope for something other than life being as it is. Enlightenment is the ending in ourselves of that hope for something other than life being as it is. So if we have a hope to be someone other than we are, or add something to our being that we don't have yet, then we are not in the territory of this enlightenment. So what's the alternative to seeing compassion as a virtue that we strive for as part of our self-improvement project? I would say that one alternative, the one I want to present today, is that we can understand compassion as rooted in our capacity to resonate. Recognizing that we are resonant beings, whether we like it or not. This is not something we need to manufacture. This is something that is already the case. This is actually in the territory of being, life being as it is. So what do I mean by resonance? Resonance is, I use it as a metaphor in a way, but it's a physical phenomenon. So if you imagine a bell in a room together with another bell, and you strike one bell, the other bell will pick up frequencies from the bell that you've struck. That's resonance. And my observation is that our being in the world is has that kind of resonant quality, or we have the capacity to resonate with the things around us. And in my view, that is happening with all perceptual content, so to speak. With what we see, what we hear, what we taste, smell, etc. Also what we think, or what comes to us in the form of thought. And so then the question is, how can we recognize, cultivate, develop this capacity for resonance? First of all, let me say, I think we are these resonant beings, but we find a way to interfere with that resonance all the time. And this goes back to a very basic, sense of preference. When you are in a situation where you are resonating with a certain kind of suffering, and it arrives here as a resonance, you may not want to feel this feeling that's arising in you, because as a default posture that we're in, we want to maximize good feelings and avoid unpleasant ones. Now let me say another thing about resonance. Compassion means, its etymology just means feeling with. So to be compassionate means to feel with. Sometimes we talk about compassion as if it's, we use words like empathy and compassion in a synonymous way, and that's okay. But empathy, the etymology of empathy is really to feel, something like to feel into. Now, I think that it's not really possible to feel into something else. So a phrase like to put yourself into someone else's shoes, I think it's not really possible. I can't feel your bodies from the inside the way I can feel my own body. But I can be in resonance with your bodies, with your appearance. So what I want to say is that we feel the so-called other with our own body and mind. You following what I'm saying? So Therefore, when there's resonance in our own body and mind, we defend against unpleasantness in our own body and mind, just the way we defend against something that originates in our own body and mind. So if you are in resonance with something and you don't want to feel it, you put up defenses. So that's something to observe, that this defense manifests as turning away. If I don't look, I don't have to feel the impact of the resonance that comes immediately. But also, if I numb myself, generally numb myself, I also will feel less resonance. One way to numb ourselves is to not really be present in our bodies. If your attention mostly is glued to your discursive thinking, and you're not really residing in the body, then you will feel less resonance, less impact from the world. So just this basic sense of leaving our bodies in favor of residing in our thinking mind is a way to be a little bit numb. In addition, we carry all kinds of tensions in our bodies. So you need to be toned, to a certain degree to hold yourself upright. But as you may have noticed in your life, there can be all kinds of extra tensions that we carry around that are not really necessary. I think they're quite mysterious. It's like, what are they about? But this constant contraction that we have, that we carry with ourselves, is also interfering with resonance. We can discuss that more, but I'm just going to put this out. It's like, if you go back to this example of the bells, if you have a bell and that bell has a crack or is crunched up in some way, it's not going to resonate as freely as a bell that is intact. So there's a certain kind of intactness of our own body and mind that is a prerequisite for resonating fully. So we always resonate to some degree, but now we're talking about cultivating compassion. So I think one of the ways we need to study our own body and mind is with respect to this extra tension that we're carrying all the time. Or not, this is just an observation. Is it there? Is it not there? Etc. So I want to talk about practice. How do we practice this? I assume we're all meditators or mindfulness practitioners to some degree. And when you first sit down for meditation, the observation we can make is that attention is glued to the discursive mind. If that's not the case for you because you're a seasoned practitioner, then you can remember that it was that way when you started. So most meditation practices begin with some kind of instruction to notice how attention is glued into the discursive mind, and then to take that attention and bring it to the sensations of breathing. Now, it doesn't have to be breathing, but let's just use breathing. It's such a common meditation instruction. So you bring attention to the sensations of breathing. And I think the most important mental posture in meditation could be phrased as allowing your experiencing to be exactly what it is at this time. Allow your experiencing to be exactly what it is at this time. This would be putting into practice Joko Beck's definition of enlightenment. Allowing your experiencing to be exactly as it is at this time with no hope for it to be other than it is. So it is in this spirit that we are joining attention to the sensations of breathing. And when we do this for 30 minutes or for, over the course of 10, 20, 30 years, what happens in my experience is that we merge attention and the sensations of breathing. And you generate something we could call, for the lack of a better word, we could call breath attention. When breath and attention are merged in this way, you can pretty easily, I find, direct this breath attention to different parts of the body. You can breathe into your left foot. You can try it out while we're talking, while I'm talking and you're listening. You can breathe into your left foot, and then you can let that breath come into the left lower leg and your knee, your thigh, and then feel how it is filling your entire left leg from the toes to the hip joint, something like that. And we can be very meticulous about picking up certain parts of the left leg and become very meticulous in bringing breath attention to these parts. It can feel like to every cell of the left leg. And then you can do a similar thing with the right leg, of course, and with your arms. And you can direct this breath attention to the pelvic floor, feeling your seat on the cushion or on your chair. And almost like let the whole torso fill up with breath attention, up to the neck and the head and the face. And I'm rushing through this, you can spend your whole meditation period doing this. It's so, it's known as the body scan, but I don't mean it as a scan of the body. I mean it now as a way of noticing the, how do I want to say it? Because you're extending breath attention, you're really noticing the aliveness of your own body. And then you could try to simultaneously bring this breath attention to your feet, your hands, the pelvic floor, and the face, like the 6 endpoints of your skeleton, and feel the whole body at once as this alive, breathing space. Now there's a shift that can happen which I like to describe as, at first, you bring attention or breath attention to the body. Okay, in that formulation of the practice, bringing attention to the body, there is still a separation between the one who brings attention and the body. And the body is like an object that you are attending to. And we need to find out for ourselves if we know this shift, or if we are at the edge of inviting that shift, and that shift from attending to the body to attending with the body. If, for now, you just sort of, this is just a metaphor, but if you think of the body as a kind of receptacle that you are filling with breath attention, and then recognizing its buzzing aliveness, you can start to have a feeling that now whatever you're noticing in the world, visually or sounds, smells, tastes, it all has, the senses all have a slightly different texture in there. This would be a whole nother talk or discussion. Then you might find at some point that you are attending to all these phenomena with the body. Each observation, each noticing is like leaves a resonant trace in the body. Okay, and when I stop and we have a discussion, then we can maybe talk about that a bit more, how you experience that or what that is. Now I want to go a step further. We usually experience the world as divided into inside and outside. There's inside the body and there's outside the body. One discovery in your journey as a meditator, I think, is to discover, as I just described, try to describe the felt body as a space. The reason you can verify in yourself that the felt body is a space is that you can, or one way you can verify that is by recognizing that you can send breath attention to different places in the body. If you can send breath attention to different places in the body, it's a space. Okay, where are the boundaries of that space of the felt body? If we bring the distinction of inside and outside, that boundary of the felt body has to be the skin. But is that really the case? I mean, it makes sense when you look at the whole arrangement from the outside, so to speak. If you put yourself outside of your body and you observe the body in the world, which we can't really, but we imagine we can, then the skin separates the body from the so-called external world. But when you fully inhabit with breath attention the felt body, so to speak, from the inside, and it's kind of natural to close one's eyes to emphasize that experience. So I'm doing it right now, but it's not necessary. If you close your eyes and you emphasize to experience the felt body from the inside, do you find a boundary for your attention? Now, that's something that can be practiced. You could, again, as a first step, close your eyes and extend attention beyond what you imagine as your skin boundary to the wall in front of you. You know, I'm assuming we're all inside. Maybe one person is outside. But anyway, you extend it to a certain place in front of you, and then you do the same with the back. And you extend attention to the right wall and to the left wall and up and down. And if you want to turn it into a Buddhist practice of the 10 directions, then you add the directions between the 4 cardinal directions, you know. So it's a practice to extend your attentional sphere beyond the imagined skin boundary. So this could take some years or decades, you know. This could happen spontaneously, that this boundary falls away, and it can also be something that you intentionally enact. Dogen says multiple times in his work, he says, the entire world in the 10 directions is the true human body. The entire world in the 10 directions is the true human body. If you define the body through its skin boundary, then this statement makes no sense. It can never make sense. But if you define the true human body as your own attentional body-mind extending in the 10 directions, then you can see that everything that appears as the world appears within your own attentional field. But this attentional field, through this practice that we've just outlined of joining attention with breath into breath attention, pouring that breath attention into the parts of the body and then into the whole of the body, and then extending this whole of the body into the 10 directions. This attentional sphere is not just an abstract, you know, unembodied consciousness. This attentional sphere is your own sphere of aliveness, your own resonant sphere of aliveness. So whatever appears in that field, you know, becomes a kind of resonant arising. We are, so I'm trying to describe how we approach with practice what we actually are. We are these very open, attentional beings. But for some reason, no, it's pretty clear, but let me say it this way. For some reason, we feel threatened by this openness. Because felt intensities can arise through this openness that seem intolerable and unbearable to us. And so we find ways to close ourselves off, resist this radical resonant openness. And I've already spoken about this. It's like It's the general numbness that comes from leaving our bodies and residing in our thinking, or it is this tension that we are accumulating in response to certain kinds of situations that are particularly threatening to us. And this is also different for each of us, and that's our karmic history. Speaking from a Buddhist point of view, we have each of us has particular patterns of grasping and resisting. So practicing becomes a way of reversing this way of defending or closing off or building up tension, and going in the direction of this kind of resonant openness. So as we are on a journey to this resonant openness, we are naturally practicing our capacity for compassion. We don't have to add on something. We don't have to add on a virtue. We could say that virtue is already there, but we're really afraid of it, I think. There's this famous koan about the Bodhisattva of great compassion. Yunyan and Dawu are talking about it, and Yunyan asks, what does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with his myriad hands and eyes? Now, just this image that the Bodhisattva of great compassion has these, like, the image, I assume, infinite hands and eyes as a kind of aura. You see how that image is exactly what, it's an image for what I've tried to describe in a kind of phenomenological way, this sphere of attention that is sensitive. It is, the hands have eyes, so there's this sensitivity as a kind of aura, not restricted to the body, but extended into the whole field. And it's hands and eyes. So there's sensitivity. That's what I read the eye to mean. And then there is hands. And hands means the word I like to use here is the hands represent responsibility. We can respond in accord with the resonance that occurs. So in this koan story, Yunyan asks, what does the Bodhisattva of great compassion do with his or her myriad hands and eyes? And then Dawu says, it's like someone reaching for a pillow at night. I actually don't want to go there. We can in the discussion, but I don't want to go there right now. Yunyan says, in the story, Yunyan says, I understand. And then Dawu says, how do you understand? And Yunyan answers, all over the body, hands and eyes. all over the body, hands and eyes. This is just what I've been talking about. Now, so how do we approach our responsibility? There too, I think there is a big tendency in our culture to prescribe what we should be doing. We should be doing certain things, like there are these good things that we should be doing. We should be caring about this, that, and the other thing. But when we come from the point of view of resonance, compassionate action isn't something that we should be doing, and that there is a map for us out there that prescribes what our compassionate action has to be. If you come from the point of view of resonance, it will reveal itself to you what you will be doing. It's like you are drawn out by your capacity to resonate to be doing something. Or you will be drawn out not to do something. You'll be drawn out into non-action. Maybe that's quite disturbing. It's like, it seems like I am not taking action in this particular field. Like I'm not engaging with this kind of social injustice. But you can have a feeling like I should do that. Now here's an important distinction. It's like that we have not distinction, observation that we need to make in ourselves. When are you acting based on this kind of resonance that I'm describing? And when are you acting from a conceptual point of view in order to be a good person? Or, this is another wrinkle here, when are you acting in order to try to assuage or quiet or a resonant feeling in yourself that you don't want to feel? When we act seemingly compassionately, like trying to do something in the world, alleviate a certain kind of problem, are we doing it to help others, or are we doing it to quiet down a kind of resonance that we find intolerable in ourselves? Now, we are undivided. Body and mind are undivided. They can be experienced separately, but they are fundamentally undivided. And I and the world, you and the world, we and the world are also undivided. We can experience ourselves as separate from our environment, but fundamentally we're undivided. So in some sense, to help somebody or some situation, because we don't want to feel the pain that it resonantly brings out in ourselves, that's just the way it is. But are we doing it in a free way because we have the capacity to stay present with whatever unpleasant resonant feeling comes up in us? Or are we doing it neurotically? It's like, I have to fix this out there because I can't keep feeling this. So I'm just raising the question. It's just something we can study in ourselves. So I think, to come to a close here, compassionate action is that which is drawn out from us through resonance. And in our, let's call it, personal lives, we practice this as an intention to be in good relationship with people in our lives. Because every time you're not in a good relationship and you meet that person, some yucky feeling arises. It's this resonant feeling that something isn't right. So you keep running into the, I don't know, your body tells you constantly that there's something to resolve or put into order or alleviate. So I think that's just something to keep feeling all the time. Am I in good relationship? When it comes to the larger world, I think we are actually drawn out into certain realms of action, partly because of our karma, partly because of sensitivities that we have built up for certain kinds of forms of suffering. And I think that's equally important, we are also drawn out into non-action. Because there are situations in which we are not the right person to take action or speak, or because we don't have the skills, or because we would actually go beyond our limits of time and attention if we took on that thing too. So there's also wisdom in recognizing when we are drawn out into non-action, this weird phrase I've invented during this talk. But when you're drawn out into non-action, it doesn't mean you're shutting down. It means you continue to be that resonant being. You're just not acting on it. There's this phrase that comes to mind, Joanna Macy speaking about honoring your pain for the world. Yeah, exactly. As these resonant beings, we can honor the pain that we feel in resonance with the world, and we can be selective and sometimes even deliberate about whether it makes sense for us to act on this or not. Yeah, okay. Maybe that's enough.
Roshi, would you like to open for questions? Is that how you'd like
Yes,
to?
absolutely.
I can help facilitate here. We have more people than we can see. And forgive me if I'm stepping on you. If you wanted to transition to Q&A.
No, I love to be stepped on.
Well, we'll resonate that way together. So we have more people than I can see on one screen. So if everyone knows how to do this, down under your reactions, if you're on a computer, perhaps even on a handheld or a pad, you can raise your electronic hand. And if you would do that, then I'll notice you and say your name, and you can unmute yourself and make your comment or ask your question of Zenki Roshi and add to the richness of this session that we're having together today. And don't let me be selfish, because if you don't ask a question, I have five. so, so please. My friend Kathleen from Germany, thank you. I knew I could count on you.
I don't want you to be selfish, so
Thank you for the rescue.
and thank you, Christian. It's so great to meet you. Yeah, we had a little email exchange already when you were in Germany, so it's good to be in touch now. And I really like the phrase that you just said, Jeff, that down under your reactions, you can raise your hand. So you can raise one of your 1,000 hands below your reaction. So that resonates a lot with what you said, Christian. So I really it was great to listen to you and to and what I just want to add or resonate to is that what I heard you say about resonance. Yeah, it's other words for what I really experienced in bearing witness to really kind of open my skin border to the situation I'm in and yeah, and let the situation pull something out of me or becoming a tool of what is. So this was just what came to my mind, how much I appreciate these three tenets of the Zen peacemakers to really go into resonance with what is, with the situation, bear witness to it, and trust in that my loving action or my reaction will come from there. I don't need to push it or to be good or do something special. So it was wonderful to hear that from with your words. Thank you. That's it already. Thank you.
Yeah, and I just want to add, like, I think I'm not so familiar with the language that the peacemakers have developed for this. So I'm offering it not so much because here's a better way to talk about it, but the phenomenon is not in the language. But if we can bring the richness of language and different metaphors to it, I think it can help to clarify the experience that we're talking about. So what I personally appreciate about the metaphor of resonance is that it's using sound and this idea of frequency and also an energetic quality, and it really brings the body into play. You know, we cannot, when you talk about resonance, you cannot escape into some sort of abstraction of mind. It has to be an integrated body mind in order to make sense of resonance. So it's just, I've always felt I was given the encouragement in my practice to always find my own language and new language. So it's not about arriving at a certain kind of language. It's more like finding, also through the resonance of your own being, finding the language that works for you to open up a certain experience and to convey it to others. And let that also be new all the time, always new. You know, it's very easy to settle into a certain way of speaking, and then at some point, particularly if it's a group, it starts to be kind of dead. It's like, Yeah, we know what that is.
Yeah, thank you for this addition. Yeah, as a linguist and writer, I sense what you're talking about. Yes,
Yeah.
indeed. Thank you.
Thanks. Good to meet you.
Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Kathleen. Hoden, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead and unmute. Thank you.
Yeah, hi, Zenki. Thank you very much for this talk. That was wonderful. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. I know I relate to this as a musician and using the words of resonance and frequency. A lot of string instruments obviously will resonate with each other. A piano, touch one key, the other strings will resonate. And the language they use it would be sympathetic strings. And for that resonance to happen, the strings need to identify without separation to the other string. And like Western music's, the kind of the history of Western music is the advancement of turning dissonance into consonance and having the ability, when there's two notes that are very dissonant, to add a third note that will create a consonance. And that's pretty much the history of our music. And knowing how to put that third note in, you must be very intimate with those two that are clashing. And by doing that, I think of that as upaya. Those are skillful means in our lives to recognize, to resonate with the other, and to be intimate with it enough to know what is needed. And you reminded me of the Sufi Hazrat Inyat Khan, who was a great sitar player, and he switched from playing sitar. He said he switched from tuning sitars to tuning souls. And I think that was a very interesting thing. I'm curious if you avoided using the word sympathy in your description of resonance and the bells ringing together. And if that was on purpose because of sympathy being sort of a platitude or a hallmarky, like a sympathy card, as opposed to really identifying.
Yeah, thank you for that third node teaching. I will take that with me to explore further. And there's a kind of complication here in using the word resonance. On the one hand, the way it's used in ordinary language is I resonate with this and I don't resonate with that. Okay, so then there you have some sort of, there's sympathetic resonance, and then there is that which I don't resonate with. I'm also trying to use resonance as a kind of fundamental, as a way, a fundamental way of being in the world. In other words, everything that we are open to through the six senses is something that we actually resonate with because we can't help it. It's just the way it is. So whether I like what I'm seeing or not, I am, in the way I'm trying to use the word, I am in resonance with it. It will bring up something for me. And sympathetic resonance is almost like already the filter of our preferences that obscures this fundamental resonance. Now, I think that this filter of our preferences is already kind of our karma. So when I said sometimes we are drawn out to do something compassionately in the world, and that's related to our karma, is there is, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, it's just like we will have sympathy with certain things and causes and situations and not with others. But I also want to clarify in myself this fundamental resonance, let's call it now, where it's like just through the way I am a human being with this body and these six senses, I am fundamentally open to the world as it appears, independent of whether I like it or not. So I guess that would be the reason to leave out this sympathetic, that word, to, but it's helpful because then we can distinguish maybe between these two layers, the fundamental layer and the karmic layer.
I really like that. Yeah, our preferences, and ultimately they don't matter. We still resonate whether we prefer it or not. Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks, Hoden. Tyson Bruce, you have your hand up. Please go ahead and unmute yourself, and thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sharon. Tyson here, about 20 minutes east of Zenki Roshi, and maybe we'll do coffee someday, Roshi.
I hope so.
But yeah, I really appreciate Hoden's comments in that music for me with chord progressions and such speaks to resonance and how something can seem familiar and there's a certain progression. But what I wanted to ask Roshi was another form of resonance is with animals. As I just returned yesterday from a Zen retreat with the Mankind Project up at Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota with the Lakota at All Nations Gathering Center. And I do some work with horses and military veterans with equine work. And we spent time not only in the sweat lodge, but with the horses that were there. And one in particular is at liberty on the property. He's, to use a Lakota term, I don't know their language, but when they first saw horses, they called them big dogs. And this particular horse was just standing there when we were going into the bunkhouse. And so I went over and visited it. And as we were leaving yesterday early in the morning and loading the vehicle to come back to the Denver Boulder area and drop some men at the airport here in Denver, that horse at liberty was standing right next to my friend loading in the back seat. And then when I went to the tailgate, came over to me and, either wanted to jump in the vehicle with us or just say goodbye. And I just said, I'll see you again. And, I've had powerful experiences, whether you want to call it resonance, with those big dogs. So I'd like to hear Roshi address anything about relationship with animals and healings that occur. Thank you.
Yeah, I personally don't have a lot of exposure to horses. I grew up with animals in a certain way, though, because my father was a veterinarian. And I have a feeling for that communication with animals. First, I was always impressed with how my father did that work. He was a large animal vet, but he also, worked on the side with smaller animals. So, and I think animals just show us with so much more clarity how resonance occurs outside of the thinking mind. That it really is a kind of bodily phenomenon or a bodily communication. And so I think this becomes palpable in relationship with animals. And you asked about healing. This may sound abstract, but I think the two main, I just mentioned this recently. I think the main two movements of healing are to include what is excluded is one, and to separate what is entangled. So to include what is excluded, if we exclude the gesture of exclusion usually requires a mental separation first, and to say, this and that, and I am this and not that. And so when in a relationship with animals, when you are drawn into a relationship outside of these conceptual separating categories, this opens up a connective space, I think, in which that which is excluded can be included. Or it doesn't have to be, but that space can open up in this way. So in that sense, animals, I think, are great partners in kind of a non-conceptual way of relating to them, but then also to the world in general, and also other human beings. And I think in a relationship with animals, I am also drawn into this realm of body sensations without interpretation. Just the body sensations without a conceptual interpretation. When the horse just comes, and you feel that connection being made, I don't know, you don't have to, you're not in a social space with the horse the way you are with a human being. So then just these sensations of feeling recognized, seen, like the way this one can be touched by such an encounter is just outside of the conceptually mediated social space that we usually have with human beings.
Yeah, thank you. I just wanted to address your last statement about opening a space for connection, because one of the teachers I spent a little time with, there were 4 words on her wall who does that type of work that I enjoy. And the 4 words were curiosity, because those large beings are curious about who you are and where you're coming and why you're there. And after curiosity comes connection. And the 3rd word was clarity. And the 4th word was shift. You might call it an insight, but those have stuck with me of curiosity, connection, clarity, and shift. So thank you. And we'll do coffee someday.
Okay.
Thank you, Tyson. Wonderful, wonderful. Friends, we have more time. We can go to the bottom of the hour if you'd like. And I see Jay Vitkus, you've got your hand up. Please go ahead and unmute. Thank you.
Right. Uh, yes, Roshi, it's interesting you brought up the ways we can attend by both action and inaction equally in a discerning way. The subject matter of upaya was brought up, the skillful means. Is inaction as much an expression of upaya as action?
I think so.
You mean choosing to not respond or making a mistaken response? I'm trying to get the bigger picture on that.
Well, to not do something in a certain situation could be wise and compassionate.
Okay.
For example, when you're with somebody and they have a certain kind of problem and they're inviting you to solve it for them, it could be important to recognize that trying to solve it for them is a kind of wrong action, because you are robbing them of their dignity, or you are interfering with a process that it's theirs, and you shouldn't go in and try to fix something that's not for you to fix. So that's a form of not doing something that is compassionate and appropriate.
So a non-interference then would be a form of upaya. Yeah, I get that.
Yeah. So now, for example, if you act even though you don't have the skills to act, you could be doing more damage than good.
Right.
Even though you want to do something, and that's very much pulling you, your own maturity and self-knowledge tells you that it's not for you to do, but hopefully for someone else to step in who has the skills.
Mm-hmm. In Zen Peacemakers, this term of bearing witness. Is bearing witness in the realm of inaction? Upaya and inaction?
No, bearing witness is, as I understand it, you guys know better, so feel free to correct me. Bearing witness, the way I would describe it, is attending from the mental posture of non-reactivity.
So it's not a passive position.
No, non-reactivity, the way I look at it, is, you could say, attending without grasping or resisting.
Mm.
Okay, so in other words, it's a way to allow, in my language, to allow resonance to occur fully without blocking it right away. And so in my initial mind needs to be to invite that full resonance. And then, even though I'm separating it in time, maybe it's not really separated in time, but that's the initial mind out of which the action or non-action arises. But if I sort of preemptively already block resonances through my reactive patterns of grasping and resisting, then I don't do what I think peacemakers describe as bearing witness. I'm coming in already with a preconceived idea of how to be in the situation.
Yeah, that's good. The bearing then would be like embodying or holding the experience completely.
Yeah,
Before we-
first allowing. So in allowing for the situation to touch you.
Mhm, mhm.
So I said, I think the most, in my view, the fundamental posture of meditation is to allow your experience to be exactly what it is. Now, I think there are unconscious layers of not allowing that we're not even aware of. So I think we have an ongoing practice with allowing. That's why I think daily zazen is so important. There's no end to your practice of continuing the process of allowing your experience to be exactly what, because there's just layers of that I keep encountering where I'm not allowing. That's a deepening, in my words now, it's a deepening of my capacity to resonate, and then I would also say deepening of my capacity to bear witness. And this ability to bear witness requires a kind of stability. And we build that staying power also through our meditation by continuing to encounter unwanted experiences and being able to stay with them. We're developing a way of resting in our own field of mind, as I would say.
If I
Okay,
might,
thank you.
if I might add, I'm glad this came up because Roshi, as you were talking, I was really hearing the three tenets in what you described. And if I could just say a word about that, hopefully to clarify, and this is just my perspective and my opinions, so take them with a pinch of salt. Bearing witness sits as part of three expressions we call the three tenets, and they're offered and expressed in a linear way, a sequential way. But I think in reality, in practice, that's not necessarily how they occur. They may occur all at once or backwards or whatever. And those three are not knowing, bearing witness, and then taking loving action based on not knowing and bearing witness. And from what Roshi talked about, I would even say taking loving action based on resonance. Those first two, if I can refer to them in a linear way, not knowing and bearing witness, um, my experience is they are that resonance. They manifest that resonance. A friend of mine, Roshi Engu Dobbs, out at Ocean Zendo in Sagaponack, Sag Harbor, simplified this. He works with young men in prison, and to simplify it for them, he changed this to empty mind, soft heart, kindly acting, which I just love. I love it because it's also memorable. The vows that we say that help kind of illuminate this a little bit, and the three tenets are foundational really for Zen peacemakers. I vow to plunge into not knowing, the source of all manifestations, and to see all manifestations as the teachings of not knowing. I vow to bear witness, to encounter each creation with respect and dignity, and to be touched by the joys and the pain of the universe. And then third, I invite all hungry spirits into the mandala of my practice, and I commit my energy and my love to the healing of myself, the earth, humanity, and all creations. And those are the peacemaker vows, which once again, Roshi, as you were talking, I heard this I heard this, and sometimes, and I'll yield here in a second, but sometimes that, as you've said so beautifully, that third vow of taking loving action means not to do anything, not to take an action that looks like action. And there are times, even among us in our community, and there's 6 or 7,000 of us in the world now, we get a little crossways in thinking, well, we're an engaged Buddhist organization. Shouldn't we be doing something about war? Shouldn't we be doing something about hunger or refugees or whatever? And sometimes the answer is, it's a personal answer, of course, isn't it? But sometimes that answer is no. But the bearing witness, to your earlier question, Jay Vitkus, that bearing witness really has to do with whatever it is that's coming up. We don't look away. We don't turn away. And hopefully that helps illuminate just a little bit, maybe. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you. What was it? Empty mind, soft?
Empty mind, soft heart, kindly acting.
Yes, thank you.
Isn't that lovely?
Yes.
You can credit that to Roshi Michelle Engu Dobbs, Dobbs, Engu, Engu. We have time, friends. We have a few more minutes here. If there's another comment or question. And thank you all for staying with us. Hoetsu, you have another question?
It's just another. I would just like to kind of put the emphasis on this also concerning what Jay Vitkus said or thought about, that this bearing witness also just means to abide, so to not run away. So the usual, yeah, there's so much impulse to flee and not look at inconvenient situations or terrible things. And so the not acting of staying or abiding in such a situation and keep your eyes open. I think this is not acting and still acting or doing, yeah. Need to find other words for that, but caring. It's just that it's really a deep experience for me, and this is why I just wanted to support this viewpoint. Thank you.
Perhaps it's taking ownership of a kind.
I think it goes more in that direction that Christian talked about. That you just there is nothing who owns something. There's just you let go of your skin as a border or a limit, and then you kind of not emerge, but you become one with the situation, and so there's no ownership.
Yeah, there's no one owning. Right. Good.
Thank you, Kathleen. And we have a few more minutes. Kosan and Cindy, I see you have your hand up. If you'd like to go ahead and unmute, please. Thank you.
Yes. First, I'd like to thank you, Roshi, for your book. I've read it, just finished it up yesterday, and I found it to be extraordinarily profound, but also extraordinarily useful. So thank you for that. I have a specific incident that relates to this resonance, the feeling of, it was after the tragedy happened in Uvalde, and I found that I was completely shut down. I didn't want to, I just didn't want to deal with particularly that incident, but
I don't know, is there anything you can say about when something that horrific is brought into our consciousness? Is there, I wanted to turn away. I didn't want to deal with it. So I don't know if there's anything that can be done or not.
Brett, there's something with your microphone. I don't quite know. It was not so good first and then it was better, but I didn't hear the tragedy of what?
Oh, yes, what happened in Uvalde, Texas, the mass shooting of the children?
Yeah. Okay, I want to go back to the beginning. Jochebed says, enlightenment is the ending in yourself of that hope for something to be other than life as it is. Okay. So I am encountering a situation. It is this mass shooting. You are recognizing in yourself the impulse to turn away. This is what's happening. So you allow that experience to be exactly what it is. So in this case, this incident of suffering shows you the limitations of the limitation of what you are capable or willing to bear witness to. That is you, then you are bearing witness to that. And by opening up to that, you develop your practice. I think we need to stop judging, like if you bring in the should would be, I should be able to turn toward this. There is a process of developing our capacity of bearing witness, or developing our capacity to not turn away. Each human being turns away from something. It's not like, yeah, so I see this as a directional practice. This is why it's important that these principles, as Sean just shared with us, they are formulated as vows. Vows are intentions. Intentions are directional practices. Okay, so there's also wisdom in that which we turn away from. I mean, when we turn away from something because we don't have the capacity to really bear witness or be with it, there's also wisdom in that, because if there are things that would traumatize us, and trauma, the way I understand that, is to be a nervous system gets overwhelmed with intensity and is unable to metabolize that intensity. And we have a certain kind of inner knowledge about what we are able or not able to metabolize. But I think practice is to travel right at this edge, to investigate our capacity to bear witness, to use that language. So just to stay there, like you are doing right now with your question, just to notice in yourself, that's where I wanted to turn away. Keep investigating that. Why? What are the sensations that are coming up for you that seem so intolerable? And can you extend your the power of your mind into staying with that intensity, maybe a little bit, but just be respectful with yourself.